Information about the world of running, inspiration to fuel passion and excellence, and ideas for making connections and finding community. You're listening to A to Z Running.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Zach.
And I'm Andy.
And we've got brownies, we've got coffee, and we are ready for a great episode for you today.
Yeah, so we have Parker Stinson on. We're so excited because we've been talking about him on the A to Z Running podcast. He is coached by Dathan Ritzenhein, who we had on a few weeks back.
And as we've said so many times with these interviews, despite his elevated status in the sport, if you will, certainly elite in so many ways, which
he's
we'll
a
get to.
record holder.
He is a record holder, a current record holder. He's also run 2:10 in the marathon. So, yeah, elite by all measures. But the wisdom he has to share can connect to every one of us at every level. And especially as you think about what it feels like to run under pressure, we got a lot to learn from Parker Stinson.
Yeah, and please forgive us. We did have some issues with phone connectivity, but listen to the things he says. It's worth hanging in there.
So we got that coming up. But before we do, let's get some World of Running updates.
All right, so this week for the world of running, we don't want to dwell on Parker's competition too much, but in the world of running, we need to talk about Galen Rupp and how he chose a new coach. It's been a long time coming. Alberto Salazar was banned by the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency in October for doping violations, and Galen's really taken his time finding a new coach. He wasn't even sure if he wanted a new coach.
Yeah, he actually said in an interview that he was thinking about coaching himself for a while, but... And I find this to be a fascinating comment because Galen certainly knows the sport of running. He's fully able to coach himself if anyone is able to coach themselves. But he made the comments about needing or the value of an objective third party or outside perspective, and especially dwelling on how important it is because we tend to look at everything we're doing through an emotional lens. Mm-hmm. And so to get past that emotion, to see objectively, he thought it was necessary to have external input.
Well, for those of you who don't know who Galen Rupp is, he won a silver medal on the track in the 10K at the 2012 London Olympics and took bronze in the 2016 Olympic Marathon in Rio.
So another exceptional athlete and exceptional performance was just recently Ronex Kipruto of Kenya broke the world road 10K record, running a time of 26:24. Wow. So just do the math there. Split it in half. That's 13:12 per 5K. Except he didn't run evenly. He negative split. So he closed in about 13:06 for the second 5K.
Wow.
So, by the way, a personal record for him in the 5K as well as in the 10K. Clearly, this was just an outstanding performance.
Fire.
Yeah, something was in the water. And the women in that race also ran fast. The winning female nearly broke the world 10K road record for women in a time of 46. Let me get the numbers right. 29:46, which is 5 seconds off the existing record. So clearly some crazy things going on. Now, let me give you a little bit more context here because this is not just a small thing. Ronex Kipruto was the world bronze medalist in the 10K in Doha, the World Athletics Championships, just this past fall, which is exceptional because he was 19 years old at the time. And so now 20 years old, and he runs the world 10K road record. And not only did he run this record, but it's only 7 seconds slower than the Kenenisa Bekele world 10K track record.
Legendary.
And I say the because it literally is legendary. It's a fabled time. That record has now stood for nearly 15 years, which...
I just can't believe he still's going.
In the world of 10K running, by the way, as far as the 10K record goes, this is the longest a 10K record has stood since the beginning of tracking the 10K record by the IAAF. And that was over 100 years ago. So, yeah, this is something. And I just cannot emphasize enough how, we're seeing things happening. We talk about Eliud Kipchoge. We talk about all these performances. We're seeing things happening that are happening in ways they never have before, and it's just really exciting. One other comment about Ronex Kipruto. He ran this record not wearing the Nike shoe. So
some of you were curious about that.
Some of you were curious. Everyone's wearing the Nike shoe, and that's why all these... Nope, he was not. He was wearing something else, and I honestly don't know what it is because people seem to not be able to agree on what shoe he was wearing.
So speaking of technology in a totally different way, we're talking about the paralyzed man who won the world record for finishing the marathon in an exoskeleton suit. So this man, Adam Gorlinsky, he's paralyzed from the waist down. He completed Saturday's marathon in a 26.2-mile race, of course, it's a marathon, in a time of 33 hours, 50 minutes, and 23 seconds.
Wow.
That's a long time to be working out. That takes a lot of endurance and grit.
And we should give a clear picture of what's going on here, because these exoskeleton suits, it's not like he's going and just like a robot is running underneath him kind of thing. This thing is connected to his brain with sensors so that he's the one moving it. As he's thinking, the exoskeleton suit is moving his legs. So it's not an implant. It's attached just externally to his legs, and it's literally lifting them in a walking motion. This is just really incredible. But it's such new technology that it's not like the movies and stuff where they're jumping over mountains and through trains and all that kind of thing. So he had like walker canes on with each arm as well to stabilize himself. And just to be able to do that, I've been trying to find out what does it take to train yourself to be able to think a robot moving, and it's not easy. So that by itself, just the mental fatigue and exhaustion of trying to do that, but also clearly this was physically grueling to spend that much time. I'm so impressed.
And it's his second attempt. He's been going after this record hard, and so his first attempt he got to 17.2 miles, but this one he made it all the way and got the world record. And he says, my spinal cord injury doesn't define who I am. The message that I want to come out of this is that your injuries, your physical disabilities, your adversities will never define who you are. And he has surely overcome them.
And that is the truth. So while we're on the topic of technology, and our final comment for this segment is the Consumer Electronics Show just held recently, its annual show. And as always, they have new running technology that's announced, and this is nothing new, especially kind of the way the technology is going. It's something we're seeing now for a while. But two highlights that I'll mention. The first being a continual push toward like real-time feedback while you're running. So you're wearing some kind of sensor that gives you information about like your form, your running mechanics, and some of those kinds of things. And then it tells you what you should be doing differently, especially if you're like over the course of the run, if something's changing. It'll give you direction to try to get that back to status quo or what it should be. I don't really know how these things establish what it should be, if it's like an objective thing or if they evaluate you and then they try to create a profile for you. I know that there's probably some combination of that, but definitely some interesting things out there. It's everything from you can buy a heart rate monitor and subscribe to an app for like $10 a month, to you can spend $500 for these shoe implant things that you wear inside your shoes. So a lot of stuff. Very many different ways to do it. And the second piece then is it seems to be a common trend in the world of fitness to always look for like shortcuts to good workouts. How can we recreate the gym experience in our own home, all that kind of stuff. And there's some new things out that are really tech heavy that help to create some of these kinds of things. And some of it looks fascinating. Personally, I don't know if I would necessarily spend the money for these things, but I would love to try them or hear about people who try them just because I'm curious how they work or if they work or how well they work. The one point of caution, as I look at this, even just the heading here, shortcuts to good workouts, it's always a point of caution because whenever you're looking for a shortcut to something, chances are it's cutting something quality out. And that something quality can take many shapes and forms, but it's something that I generally try to avoid if I can because I want the best quality workout experience. So whether it's tech or obviously great performances, a lot of things going on, and we'll keep you up to date and posted on the next and newest stuff next time.
For our main topic, we have an interview with Parker Stinson. Very excited to have him on. We're so grateful that he's decided to share with us about running under pressure. It was really exciting for us, me and Zach, because we were at the race where he broke the 25K American record in Grand Rapids, Michigan at the Amway Riverbank Run. So that was really exciting for us. That's one of many accolades that Parker brings to the table.
Yeah, and then he went on later in the season to run 2:10 in the marathon at Chicago, where we also were, but not necessarily anywhere near where he was at the time.
We were running also
Way
and
to
way
ways
behind.
back.
Yes.
But yeah, very exciting stuff. And so clearly, as you might guess, with accolades like that, and we haven't even touched on his full career here, but he knows what it's like to run when the stakes are high and there's a lot of pressure, and we wanted to tap into that in our conversation. So we'll get to that in just a moment. But first, it's probably helpful to get some background on what Parker has done and where he's been.
So Parker is very familiar with competition and competing under pressure. He started as a junior champion. So he's been a 3-time U.S. junior champion in the 10K, Pan Am junior champion in the 10K, and he went to World Junior Championships and was 6th there.
So the junior championships, by the way, are U20. Anything under 20 counts as junior championships. And when you race at a level like that, for the majority of the time, you're racing against some of the best in the collegiate level. Because even though it's junior, there's still oftentimes freshmen, sophomore, even sometimes juniors in college racing in those events.
And he did really great in college too, NCAA 5K. He was 3rd for 2 years. He's a 9-time All-American. So he's been on the running scene a long time, and that kind of sets us up for a conversation about how to run under pressure.
And we should say too, because it does come up in the conversation, but Parker knows what it's like to succeed, as we've already mentioned, but he also knows what it's like to fail and to not meet the expectations placed on you or you place on yourself. And so we wanted to talk to him about that. How do you deal with the lows, and what do you do when there's highs? And so we're going to get into that and more in our conversation with Parker Stinson.
So Parker, thanks so much for joining us on the A to Z Running podcast. We're so glad that you decided to come on.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Michigan and Grand Rapids and that whole area, as you guys know. So I'm really grateful and excited to be on your guys' podcast.
Well, it certainly makes sense that you would appreciate the West Michigan area after the 25K last year and the American record. That was a solid performance, right?
Yeah, that was one of those special days. You just, I think we've all runners have had those days. I think it's probably what brings us keep coming back to the sport. We've had those days, but they're usually like a random training run or maybe like a workout, but so little, like it's so rare that it happens on such the perfect stage and on the day that you're open when you're firing on all cylinders and you have a great opportunity. It's so rare to have that day where you just never really seem to get tired no matter what you do. You're just unstoppable. So, yeah, super grateful and lucky that it happened on that day, and just waiting for the next one to come around.
Yeah, definitely. We were excited for you as we were able to see that in action. That kind of lends itself, Parker, to our focus for the conversation, if you will, just really talking about the aspects of running and racing in a high-stake environment and what it takes to be aggressive, even when it doesn't always work out. And you've certainly had some lows, and obviously, as we're talking, you've had some highs. So in that sense, you just kind of hinted at it. When things are really clicking and they're coming together, and you just know you can pour it on. That doesn't necessarily, you don't know that until you're already a little ways into things. You've kind of already put yourself out there, right? So just knowing the idea of being aggressive when sometimes it doesn't work out, has that always been the case for you? Like, have you been able and willing to put yourself out there like that in a race, or is there a point in your career when you really started to grow in that way? What's that been like for you?
Yeah, I think I've always been that way, but it's like what you said. It's come with a lot of failures, and I think most of the time that it's turned into success stories. I've had a coach or someone important that's just kind of had to beat that instinct out of me time and time again, and I learned to do it the right way. And I was a little kid. I when I was like 10 or 11, I started on track. And, the coaches and other people on the team, even though I was just okay at the time, but everyone had so much respect for me and gave me all these nicknames and stuff because they just, never saw anyone, work so hard. Especially, you have to remember I was probably, 4 feet and I had a shaved head and, it was just crazy looking. So, I've always been that way. And then when I was younger, if you can believe it or not, when I started to have a ton of success my dad taught me how to run like even splits, reverse splits. And I learned that at like the age of 12, and then somehow have, like all kids, I guess, shunned their parents' teachings time and time again. Because then at Oregon, I went through a phase of running too aggressively and not being able to finish what I start. And then same thing, those coaches had some really rough talks with me and kind of like our way or the highway and stuff like that. And then, I actually ended up getting third in NCAA's twice and out kicking like 6 people at the end of races. And so I didn't really think of myself as that kind of athlete, but with their help and their support, they kind of channeled that aggressiveness you're talking about in the right way. And then, yeah, and most recently, I was having a lot of failures in the marathon and other stuff, and then started working with Dathan and also started training alone. And even though I am really aggressive and, people love to think of me as this sort of way, when you're training alone, you can only kill yourself every single day by yourself so much. So I kind of just I wouldn't say I slack off or anything, but I just kind of go a little bit easier on myself day in, day out. And then I think that's allowed me to kind of channel it a different way and a better way in these races. And so yeah, it's kind of the story of I've gone back and forth through it actually ever since I started running.
I'm getting, as you're describing that, Parker, I'm getting this vision of the classic mountain dojo with the young aspiring warrior who's all hot-headed, aggressive, and the dojo master who's you need to channel your aggression. But that's it, right? You're learning to cultivate what can be a weapon in your arsenal when wielded properly.
Yeah, and I think something that was so special about this last year is I'm really proud of both moments. The 25K was such an amazing day of running aggressively and working out, but also just such a pure raw potential performance of that was so fast and so impressive for me. And the Chicago Marathon was great, running 2:10. Now, I think that 25K would probably say that I could run 2:08 or something. So you'd think, oh, well, would you be disappointed in Chicago? And they're just so different, because what I'm happy about Chicago was the composure and the execution and finishing the race with my fastest miles at the end. And I'm so proud of that. And it's so different. It was such a mental breakthrough, where the 25K was more just oh man, I had my day and I just kept pouring it on. And I'm really proud from a talent standpoint of what that represented. But to me, Chicago's performance represents much more a masterful artwork, and really it took everything that I had to it took mental everything to get that done. Where the 25K, I just kind of poured it on and it worked out.
So can you tell, Parker, our listeners what Chicago meant for you and what your goals were going in and how you executed them?
Yeah, no, I mean, it meant everything, because even as we were just hinting at, the 25K was amazing, but it's just in this sport and in this industry, or maybe it's any other human being, you just notice a lot of negative things, or people always want to criticize. So it's kind of even when I soloed an American record and won by 80 seconds, people want to just be well, it's not a marathon. So he still doesn't have what it takes and all that kind of stuff. So to do it at the real distance on such a huge stage, and with all those Americans around and so many other good people having such a good day, that's normally something that would have really bothered me. And just got it done. And my goal was to break 2:11, and that's exactly what I did. And my other goal was, if I can't break 2:11, I want to improve. I want to make steps forward in the marathon. So even if I just run 2:12, I want to be closing it well. I want to be someone who's moving well at the end of the race. And that goal was actually so important to me and to Dathan and I about trying to make the Olympics, that it was almost Parker, we don't want you to go out there and just run like a madman and go run 2:08, 2:09, because we already did that in the 25K. It was so much more important for us to run 2:10, 2:11 the right way, because I'm not going to just out-fitness people in Atlanta on that kind of course. Like, I'm going to have to earn my Olympic bid by, like, just finding a way to beat people over the last 10K. And so Chicago couldn't have been more perfect. And last year was just so perfect because I got such an amazing performance in the 25K from just, like, a talent standpoint and an exciting and ability standpoint. And then Chicago was such a high-pressure situation after setting the American record. And honestly, just Dathan and I personally knew, it doesn't, I ran 2:10:53, so that's what I ran, but I was in better shape than that, and we both knew that. So it was kind of like the least I could do was break 2:11. So it was a lot of pressure, but I'm really grateful to get it done, and so it meant a lot to do that on such a huge stage in Chicago.
Yeah. So how did you use that pressure to achieve your goal? Because for some of us, me, sometimes pressure can make it harder, but it also can elevate. How do you, in all this experience that you've had, I mean, you were multiple time junior champion. You were at the World Junior Championships. You've done this for a long time. So I guess what would your advice be for someone like me who sometimes can have pressure be a negative thing and then sometimes elevate under pressure? How do you make the most of it so that most of the time you're being elevated?
Sure, yeah. I have so much experience with this, and I've worked with so many sports psychologists and stuff, and it's pretty cool. So I guess the first thing I would say, just how it works for me is, like you mentioned, I've been doing it for so long that I think I need those situations at this point for me to really get the most out of myself at this point. But what you're talking about, and I know that everyone deals with it, and I love this advice. I even just gave it to a buddy of mine, Dan Nestor, who he won in Monumental Half in a PR of 62:57, and he led the whole thing and won, and it was amazing. So what someone told me one time was those feelings of that big stage and feeling nervous and feeling anxiety and feeling like you don't want to be there, or whatever it is. So many people see that and they go, "Oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? Like, why am I feeling this way? What's wrong? What's wrong?" And what someone told me is those are completely normal feelings. Everyone feels that. And instead of trying to mask them or trying to push them away, you need to let them in, and you need to sit with them, and you need to be okay with those feelings and slowly try to understand them and work away from them. And I love that advice. And so, for instance, 25K, I thought about winning that race, and I thought about failing in that race, and I thought about everything like 10 days in advance. And I've never thought about a race that much. And most people would tell you, don't do that. Don't, no. Like, you're going to psych yourself out. You're going to psych yourself out. And I think if I'd started doing that 2 days before, a day before, I think you could be right. But instead, it gave me the time to process losing to people I didn't want to lose to, or not having this great day, or staying with Dathan and his family for 2 weeks and, like, not winning a race that I should very much win, and processing those things and just thinking about them. And the last thing I'll say on it is pretty cool. My training for Chicago went amazing. The last week or so, I lost a lot of confidence. So I don't know. I just didn't feel like myself when I came to Michigan this time, unfortunately. And I remember like around miles 4, 5, or 6, somewhere in there at Chicago, we weren't out fast. We were out slow, actually. Even I think we were probably 5-minute pace, and I ended up running 4:59 and closing in like 4:50s. And at 4, 5, and 6 miles, I felt so overwhelmed by the crowd and how many people were there, and the fact that we were barely on pace, and I didn't really feel that good. Somehow I ran another 20 miles at that. But that was just anxiety, and that was just those things coming in, and I didn't want to be there. Like, I really didn't want to be there, and I don't know how much I thought about dropping out, but I felt very overwhelmed by the situation at times, and I just had to deal with it and hope that I didn't lose focus and get too down in that moment, but it's amazing because then I thought, how could you possibly keep running? And then you run 20 more miles and pick it up. So I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, and really quite impressive that, like you said, feeling that way that early on, and then just continuing to run 20 miles in it, and coming out the other end quite successful. So that's really impressive in that sense, and just certainly speaks to what we're really hearing here from you, Parker. So I'm curious then, what do you feel like when you think about kind of the right amount of pressure, the external pressures, whether it's like the contracts or the the goals set for you with your coaching and in your training, and then the internal pressures too, your own expectations of yourself and the emotions around there. What do you feel like is the right amount and the right combination of things for a good pressure for a race?
Yeah, that's tough. I've run really well when I've kind of had opportunities and then kind of like mess them up, and then people, I don't want to, be negative, but like people just don't really care how you do anymore. So like that's a very freeing thing, because you still have your own internal goals and pressure, and at least for me, I'm really hard on myself, and like so that's always going to be enough. The external stuff can be fun. It's not the right amount when your contract or obligations or things you're doing are so much so that you're going to make decisions that aren't in the best interest for your career and things like that, because at the end of the day, those people need to realize, like, it's just one race, it's just one thing, and like if they really believe in you, you know what, they're just going to have to deal with that. Maybe you got hurt, or maybe that didn't work out that time, but it's right for you. I mean, even my story, like my Achilles was all messed up, and I couldn't do much in my first few years with Saucony. But they just gave me my space, and I did what I could do, and things come around, and then set an American record and run 2:10, and I'm only 27, but if they made some huge deal or like reduce me or whatever and all this kind of stuff, you probably just end up continuing to get injured. It's a really hard question to answer because it depends. I think some athletes do need that external pressure from coaches or agents or shoe companies. So I think it's just really individual based. I love this sport. I love working hard. No one cares more about how I do or is affected by it more than me. But I think most runners by nature are really hard on themselves and really intrinsically motivated. It's a very social sport, but there's also a lot of very like spiritual and like alone moments that I don't think people would get through if it didn't matter a lot to them personally.
Hey listeners, apologies for this interruption, but right in the middle of the conversation there, something happened with our equipment and it crashed on us. So we had to continue the conversation with Parker without our microphones. So apologies there, but let's go ahead and wrap it up here and hear the rest of Parker's comments. Our closing question, if you will, Parker, is just in thinking about Atlanta now and thinking about, you've done those things in so many ways in the last 9 months. You've kind of proven, I would imagine, as you've been talking, certainly a bit to yourself, but certainly to the rest of the world, you've proven that your name belongs on that list. Who should we be watching in this race? And after that execution in Chicago, I imagine you've got to be looking forward to Atlanta, like the chance to test it, to put it all to the test. Are you excited about that? Are you nervous about that? What are you feeling?
Yeah, no, I'm really excited. I think I had to just make up so much ground this last year to like we said, to deserve to have my name be mentioned and everything. And I'm so excited and grateful that that 2019 went the way it went. And yeah, like I think I just have no doubts anymore. And not in a cocky way. It's just like, I think that's why so many people are excited about the trials on both the men and the women too, is like I've proven to myself, and a lot of people have proven to themselves and to other people, that we all have the caliber and the execution to become Olympians. It's just going to be who has their day and who can handle that course. But yeah, absolutely, there's no doubt in my mind that February 29th 9th, like if I have my day like that, I definitely believe now that I can become an Olympian with the last year that I showed. But it's really like if you have your day or not, because there's so many other guys. And if I have an A minus day and someone else in that category has an A plus, then yeah, I'm probably not going. But it feels really cool to, I do, like I'm not an Olympian, but I feel like I can kind of see what it takes now. And I feel like I've proven that to myself. So it's just kind of like that old saying of, well, the fun part is like going out there and now doing it.
So Atlanta, if I can give an analogy, Atlanta is like the razor's edge. Everyone's going to be out there running the razor's edge, and who keeps the edge the longest, kind of thing.
Oh yeah, no, I mean it's just like I think that course is such an equalizer too, because I think anyone that's maybe a little bit of a different class, like your Leonard Careers or your Galen Rupps, if he's healthy, it's not a course that you just want to try to go outclass people like Shalane Flanagan and Amy Craig did in LA. They were just out there already like mile 6 just running together in front of everyone. I even if I'm those guys and you're 5% better than everyone, 10% better, it's still kind of just risky because you don't know. So I just think it leaves the door open for a lot of people that if they have good days, like it can be really, really exciting. And man, for the fans and for family members and TV, it's just going to be, I think it's going to be a trials to remember for sure.
I was actually lamenting, Parker, because I am one of the slowest people to have made it, for the Olympic trials, and I'm not going to get to watch it. Like, I'm going to find out after everyone else about how you did. Anyway, I was lamenting to a friend about that because I'm going to be like 40 minutes,
Yeah. How about this? How about you run like 2:39 on that course, and I'll go run like 2:09, and then maybe you can still see it.
Well, that sounds like a plan.
Sounds good to me too. I just wrote down this quote that you said, that you love the sport, you love working hard, and no one cares or is affected by it as much as me.
Let's do it like this, Parker. Let's have this kind of just be the summary of the conversation, if you will. Just kind of go back to that point of, when you're dealing with the pressure, and what the question was, what was the right amount of pressure? But obviously that's not necessarily the great question. But what is it that it means for you to be dealing with that pressure? And you were talking about loving the sport and loving working hard. Come back to that.
Yeah, basically that thought about, I love the sport and I love working hard, and no one cares more about I live or die by my results. Like I've tried to get away from that a little bit and go towards the process, but I live and die by my results. And I just think and you have to know the athlete you're dealing with, but basically when we were talking about the right kind of pressure is, I've just through my career had these coaches who would come down like super hard on me and like this and that, or other pressures, and that just doesn't work well for me because like I said, and this isn't the case. It's just an example. I have a great agent, and I've been very happy with him. But for example, like let's say an agent is really frustrated with how you did, or they're like pissed that you didn't run well and stuff. And I'm like, well, guess what? You get 15% of the money I just missed out on. I missed out on 85%. So but that's kind of like that's how I treat the whole sport. Same thing. Look, I know coaches. I've had so many great coaches, that pour their heart into it. And they can get frustrated when I'm not performing well. But the thing is, it's like, who gets more frustrated? I'm the one who has to go home and like live with it. And I live with it really in a very tough way sometimes. In fact, actually, when I was a sophomore, I think at the University of Oregon, name drop here a little bit, Matthew Sensuitz and I, he kind of took me under his wing. We were pretty good buddies, and he was kind of the same way, and he actually took me on a run and used to talk to me about it a lot, and talk to me about I just have to stop I would get I would get way too high and way too low. And he said, that's okay, like with races, a big race getting really high, enjoy that. A big low in a race, you got to deal with that. But I would get so high like about like a great workout or like a great few weeks of training that, when inevitably you come down from that, I would just get so low. And so it just kind of goes along with that point of I put so much pressure on myself because I just really live and breathe this sport that I don't need any more pressure from other people. It doesn't end up being a good thing for me.
Well, and there you have it. Just knowing, like you were saying earlier, just knowing yourself and how you may differ from others in that sense, and then being able to turn that into productive action. Where you can channel that, as you were saying earlier about like the aggression and such. Parker, just channeling that into a successful endeavor, and you've been doing that, and so it's been a real joy to see your career kind of going through these phases in a sense, and we're certainly excited for Atlanta. Obviously, we can't know what the result's going to be, but we know you're ready for something, and that's really exciting. So we're really hopeful that it can come together for you there too.
Yeah. I'll pour it out there, whatever I got. So we'll see how it goes.
Well, Parker, thanks so much for giving your time to our audience and sharing from your experiences and certainly your talents and strengths.
Appreciate everything you guys are doing. Really enjoy the podcast and love being in Michigan. So I'll have to meet up with you guys when I get back out there. And yeah, just keep doing your things, and cheers to, healthy build-up for you guys, and really excited for you guys too.
Awesome, thanks.
Appreciate it.
We'll see you in Atlanta.
Definitely some great insights from Parker there, and certainly some challenges with just trying to connect with him with the phone and some things like that, but it's still great for him to give that time and share some of his insights. So Andy, as you reflect on the conversation, what stood out?
I really appreciated how Parker talked about how he loves the sport so much as part of what drives him. He loves to work hard, and this is the part that I really resonated with, that no one cares about our performances as much as we do. It's a very personal thing. So when we put everything in perspective, when we look at these exterior pressures, the thing that matters the most is our satisfaction in our work.
Yeah, and I think one of the fascinating things about his passion for the sport is, as we touched on early in the interview, it often in his career has translated to aggressive racing, and that's been both the cause for some of his big successes as well as the source of some of his not as successful endeavors. And so just that whole point of he just chases after it with everything he's got. And, someone like that is going to experience some lows, but also, and we just love that he's had the opportunity to experience some highs and really reap some of the rewards for all of that work and just the passion and love of the sport throughout all of that.
And you're definitely going to want to follow Parker. He's a really fun one to watch and get to know, especially because he does have an awesome shot. He's one of the major contenders for making the Olympic team.
Absolutely. And we said it to him and we'll say it again. We're hopeful that the race goes well for him. And of course, you never know exactly what the marathon has to offer on a given day, but he's going to go out and he's going to race with the best, and it's going to be an exciting time.
If you like this episode, make sure you give it a share, follow Parker on Instagram and at AtoZrunning.
And you can find all the details and links to anything that you need to follow up on at AtoZrunning.com/episode 15.
Thanks again. Have a great week.